Hello and welcome. You're watching To The Point. Last night, after a 12-year respite, London was again hit by a major terror attack. It's left 4 people dead, 40 injured, and 7 are said to be struggling for their lives. The attack was launched by a man in a car who mowed down pedestrians before crashing into the railings outside Westminster and attacking and killing a policeman with a knife. It happened on the first anniversary of the Brussels attack, and it bears an uncanny similarity to similar terrorist attacks in Nice and Berlin. In 10 minutes, I shall be talking to a senior Conservative MP and a former Cabinet Minister, Andrew Mitchell, the managing editor of the Financial Times, James Lamont, the well-known expert on terror, Ajay Sani, and one of the most senior Indian journalists based in London, Ashish Ray. But first, I'm joined by the British High Commissioner in India, Sir Dominic Asquith. High Commissioner, almost 24 hours after the attack, what do we officially know about the attacker? Are there confirmed details beyond the fact he's British-born and was known to MI5?
Well, it won't come as a surprise to you that given there's a full-scale counter-terrorist investigation by the police underway, that I'm limited in what I can say. I can say the following, though, which is that there have been a number of searches, and at the last count, 8 arrests made following searches in Birmingham and in London. Yes, as you say, the identity is British. The identity is known to police and to MI5, and when the operational considerations permit, he will be named. He was investigated over concerns, some time ago, over concerns about violent extremism, but the assumption remains that he operated alone, and that there will not be further attacks. And that he was the operating assumption is that he was working on the basis of Islamic extremism.
Now, roughly less than an hour ago, IS on their website claimed responsibility for the London attacks. They described the attacker as a soldier of Islam. Do you have reason to accept that claim, or are you doubtful and skeptical of it?
I'm not going to comment on claims made by IS. As I say, the investigation is underway. It's a full police counter-terrorist investigation. They worked through the whole of last night, and obviously they're working at full pelt at the moment. So until they're ready to comment on what their view is of what the background of the attacker was, I'm not going to comment on claims made outside of that investigation.
Now, I know that various channels are reporting that this is believed to be a lone wolf attack. But do the 8 arrests in Birmingham and London and the 6 houses that were raided suggest that perhaps more than one person could be involved? Are those arrests of people who could be accomplices and supporters and helpers?
Well, again, I'm not going to comment on the background to arrests that were made in the context of the investigation. But we do, as the Prime Minister said earlier, only a few hours ago, our working assumption is that he was acting alone, that he was motivated by Islamic extremism, and that we don't expect any further attacks. And for that reason, we have not raised the threat level in the UK or in London.
Now, questions have been raised about the timing of the attack yesterday. Do you believe it's just a coincidence that the London attack happened on the first anniversary of the attack in Brussels?
I'm not going to comment on that one either. I don't have, I'm not going to comment on the motivations, speculate about the timing or the motivations of the attacker at this stage. As I say, there's an investigation underway. It will come out, in terms of our views, it will come out in good time.
What about similarities between the London attack and the ones that happened in Berlin and Nice last year? Like London, there too, vehicles were used to plow into innocent people, randomly killing whoever they managed to kill. Are you struck by that similarity of strategy?
Well, we've seen over the years, sadly, an intent by a variety of operators, terrorists operating with a particular motivation to attack values that we hold dear, and indeed your listeners in India here hold dear, they are not going to succeed by trying through violent means to shift us from our attachment to those values. They may indeed be various motivations and various modus operandi that those who conduct the violent attacks decide to pursue, whether they're connected or mimicking each other. Again, I'm not going to speculate. The key point is the response to those attacks, and the response has been extraordinary, internationally and nationally. I'm deeply grateful for the very many messages of support, condolence from Indians from all walks of life, but also very prominently from the President, the Prime Minister, the Foreign Minister, a variety of Chief Ministers. The Lok Sabha, of course, had a minute's silence. Parliaments around the world, in Australia and New Zealand, have been passing motions of condolence and support for what has happened. And the Prime Minister, our Prime Minister, very prominently, just recently in Parliament in her statement earlier today, said we are back in conducting business as normal in the oldest Parliament of all in the world. So that is very much the response here, whatever the intention and motivation of the attacker and previous attackers elsewhere in the world. We will ensure and remain firm by our commitment to those values of freedom, openness and resilience in our response.
Now, High Commissioner, this is being described as what's called a low sophistication, low cost attack. Do you believe that is in fact a sign that the counter-terrorism measures have been effective in stopping terrorists using normal bomb tactics, which is more commonly identified with them, and this is a desperation on their part to have to resort to using a car as a weapon and a kitchen knife?
You're getting me to speculate about his motives and what was behind it. Yes, we've seen the way he conducted it. There have been many speculations about what the effect of the security measures, a tightening of security measures around the world have produced in terms of the reaction from the terrorists determined to carry out these attacks. What is clear from this particular attack yesterday is the brutality of his actions. We've seen it in the film clips of how he carried it out and what his intentions were. And that's what we need to look at. What are the intentions, not just the means, the modus operandi that they choose. What are the intentions? And the intentions are quite clearly, look at the target that he chose, to attack those values and those institutions that are important to us and to those who share our values.
Does it worry you that an attack of this kind, where a single man uses a car as a weapon and a kitchen knife to kill, is the sort of attack that could happen at any time, and there's not much that authorities anywhere in the world can really do to prevent it? Does that worry you, or is that just something one has to learn to accept and live with?
We've seen a number of these attacks, and the important thing is to be conscious, to be vigilant of the risks that do exist. There is no 100% security one could ever put in place against those who are determined to carry out attacks. But again, I come back to the response. The important bit is not to be cowed by these attacks and to answer in the best possible manner, which is to get back to work, as indeed Parliament did today, as millions of Londoners, of British citizens and indeed of visitors to Britain went about their business again today. It is a mark of the vulnerability that exists wherever we are. We've seen it across the world, we've seen it in Europe, we've seen it elsewhere, we've seen it of course here in India. So yes, there are people, it's a cliche, there are people out there who are determined to attack us, but that's been so for some time. The important thing for us is not to be shaped or cowed by what they are trying to do.
What is your message this evening, High Commissioner, to Indians who might be planning visits to the United Kingdom but could be apprehensive after yesterday's terror attack?
Well, as I said, we believe he was acting alone. We do not believe that there is reason for that there will be further attacks. We have not raised the security threat level. There are, at this stage, more police out on the streets and security forces patrolling, but people are going around doing the business of their daily lives as they were day before yesterday. And so my sense and my message to Indians is that London remains an extremely open place, very welcoming. There is, as they would expect, tremendous resilience amongst the British people when they are confronted by this, but they will find London as welcoming and as open as it always has been. There are 300 different languages being spoken in London. It is one of the most cosmopolitan and open places. That's the message that remains. We are vigilant. We have extremely effective police and security forces who reacted extraordinarily quickly. And we have a remarkable population in London who came to the rescue of those who were injured straight away without thinking about their own security. So London is back working again.
Finally, High Commissioner, the French Foreign Minister flew to London today and was present at the House of Commons to express his country's solidarity when it met this morning. Less than a week before the British government triggers Article 50 to leave the European Union, how do you view this somewhat unprecedented act of French solidarity?
Well, we expect the negotiations on Brexit to, when the Article 50 is triggered, to proceed in the way that we would, and we believe it is in the interests of Europe also, we would like them to proceed, which is for the benefit of both sides. So I'm delighted that the French came and made this gesture, but it's a gesture also that is being reciprocated by many people around the world. The support that we have received all over the world in the wake of this incident has been very moving. So I say thank you to everybody, the French of course included.
Thank you very much, High Commissioner. That was Sir Dominic Asquith, the British High Commissioner in India, speaking exclusively to this programme. Joining me now is the senior Conservative MP and former Cabinet Minister Andrew Mitchell, the managing editor of the Financial Times, James Lamont, the well-known expert on terror, Ajay Sani, and one of the most senior Indian journalists based in London, Ashish Ray. Andrew Mitchell, let's start with the attacker. The High Commissioner understandably was constrained by not wanting to speculate, but there are reports that the attacker is said to be of Asian origin, and some people believe that the raids and the arrests that have been conducted in Birmingham could corroborate this. Do you believe he's likely to be of Asian origin, or is it simply impossible to tell?
Karen, I'm afraid we've got technical difficulties this weekend. I can hardly hear what you are saying. It may be necessary to conduct the interview on a telephone. I can't hear you at all. I can hear that you're speaking, but I can't hear what the question is.
All right, I will ask my producer to come back on the phone to you, and hopefully we'll have a better time that way. Let me put that question to you, James Lamont. As a journalist, as someone I imagine who's following this story very closely, there is a lot of speculation that the attacker could be of Asian origin, and many people feel that the raids in Birmingham, the arrests in Birmingham could corroborate that. What have you found out? Do you believe he's Asian, or is it just speculation at this point?
Well, good evening, Karen. The facts that we know are that he's British-born, and that he was investigated before, possibly some years before, by MI5. So he has been a suspect before now. We do not know whether he is of Asian origin, and the fact that there have been arrests made and houses searched in Birmingham and London doesn't help us know any more about him other than that he is British born and that he's been living in Britain. What is actually known about him is very little. What we know more, of course, about is the event itself, and that he was under investigation a while ago. Theresa May, the Prime Minister, in her statements said that though he may be involved in Islamist extremism, he was a peripheral figure. So we don't think that he is part of a bigger plot here, or indeed a bigger network. Although when people do talk about lone wolf attacks, they are rarely entirely lone, and that other people are usually involved. As you've probably seen, that there has been a statement made by Islamic State claiming responsibility that came out earlier this morning.
I've seen that statement. In fact, now that Andrew Mitchell is with me, I want to put that to you, Andrew Mitchell. The statement put out by ISIS is that they have claimed responsibility. They've described the attacker as a soldier of Islam. Understandably, the High Commissioner didn't want to comment on that, but what's your feeling, both as an MP and a former senior cabinet minister? Do you think the hand of ISIS is discernible and detectable? And then if it is it a direct connection or simply some sort of influence of ISIS-type ideology and thinking?
Well, I think it's important to recognize that this was a lone wolf attack, and that it was one person who was engaged in this attack, at least in its execution. It may well be that Sir Dominic or your other guest have already made that point. But I think the alleged involvement of ISIL underlines the importance of the international community taking full military action to complete the campaign that is currently being waged in Raqqa and Mosul. But I emphasize that the military campaign, defeating ISIL militarily, is the easy part. The much more difficult part is defeating this pernicious nihilist ideology, a sort of death cult, which we need to confront in many different ways. That is 90% of the issue, the military defeat in the Middle East, in the so-called caliphate, in Raqqa, built on Raqqa and Mosul. That is the easy part. Defeating the ideology is much more difficult.
Ajay Sahni, will we ever find out the specific motivation behind this attack? Or is it just likely to be a desire to create fear and a more general hatred of the West and Western values?
I think it is more the latter. You will, of course, eventually an investigation will come upon the specifics of this individual's motivations, his background, and you may find factors that contributed to his decision. But broadly, what we have to understand is that these violent manifestations are overlaid. They are the fringe manifestation of a very much wider process of non-violent radicalization, which has been ongoing for years, decades, across very wide areas of the world, and in a very concentrated, focused manner in the UK as well. And I think that is where people are mobilized from this base of non-violent radicalization, and then they find the triggers may come from a provocation that they read about on the internet from the Islamic State media or statements that they are making.
Okay.
And there was, of course, the Islamic State generalized call to everyone everywhere who sort of was influenced or sympathetic to them to go out and do whatever they could in terms of violence. And one of the recommended methods was, of course, simply to use a vehicle to do as much damage as was possible.
How are the British media and public opinion in Britain responding to the fact that this attack in London happened on the first anniversary of the Brussels attack? Do they see it as a coincidence, or do they see it as a telling factor? And what about the similarities between the Berlin and Nice attacks and the London attack? In all three cases, vehicles were used to plow into innocent people, randomly killing whoever they could.
Well, there are similarities, and of course media have mentioned the Brussels incident more than other incidents, and therefore people are aware of it. But there's a spirit of resolve, and it's been there since yesterday, and today Westminster is back to normal. Parliament Square is moving around as usual. Westminster Bridge has been reopened. So it is back to business as far as Britain is concerned.
One of the things, Andrew Mitchell, about this attack is that it's been described as what's called low sophisticated and low cost. Fairly similar to the one at Orly Airport in Paris last week. If terrorists are now resorting to this sort of strategy, does it suggest that counter-terrorism measures to prevent a larger bomb attack are actually succeeding? That they are unable to carry out the big attacks we've seen in the past, and they're sort of resorting to using cars and vehicles and kitchen knives as attacking implements?
Well, it may do, and I think that the British security services have been efficient and effective, as we know, from deterring up to 12 attacks in the last year. And it underlines for Britain and for British people here the importance of being vigilant, being sensible in the way we go about our daily lives, without allowing this to impede the way we conduct our lives. And I think there's a good and careful balance to be struck there. But it is extremely difficult to deter these attacks, which is why we are on a very high state of alert in Britain. This is something which you in India have also had to wrestle with as well. Terrorism is a hideous factor of modern day life, and the job of government is to address issues of public safety without damaging individual liberty. We have to be sensible and balanced on this. I think we've been good at so far at deterring the larger attacks which you describe. And in terms of these lone wolf attacks, they're much, much more difficult. And vigilance is the key, in my view, to deterring them, as well as the other programs that Britain is running domestically, which we work on with local communities. The constituency which I represent is on the edge of Birmingham, where these programs have been, on the whole, quite successful, although I'm conscious of the events overnight in Birmingham, and we need to continue to do as we have been in the past, getting that balance right and doing everything we can to ensure that people take the basic precautions to keep themselves safe.
James Lamont, one of the implications of the sort of attack we saw in London last night or earlier last week at Orly Airport is that this sort of low sophistication attack, in this specific case a man with a car which he uses as a weapon and a kitchen knife, is not only very hard to prevent, but it can happen at any time, anywhere. I imagine that must be something Londoners are very aware of this morning. How do they respond to that?
Well, that's right. These are low-tech attacks. You've seen several others of this nature in Europe, in Paris, in Nice, in Berlin, where a car is used as the weapon. Now, how do you stop that happening? Someone ramming into a group of pedestrians. The area where this attack happened, outside Westminster Tube Station on Westminster Bridge, is a very high density area where there are usually lots of people. It's usually tourists, usually children, and parliamentarians going about their work. Similarly, somebody making an attack with a knife, again, how do you screen for knives? I think your point about why these are the type of attacks that are happening is a good one. These aren't more sophisticated attacks. They tend to be individual attacks. They haven't involved guns. They haven't involved bombs. They haven't involved multiple people. And one of the facts that has come to light in the last few hours is that there have been 13 would-be attacks on London over the past 4 years that have been foiled.
Yep.
Now, we don't know the details of those, but plainly there are other plans that are underway by extremists and people wanting to attack London, that the security services are doing a very good job of foiling and preventing. But how you stop an attack in a public place, just as we've seen in Paris, just as we've seen in Nice, in Berlin, is very, very difficult. Without infringing on civil liberties, but they're almost impossible to prevent.
Let me put that to you, Ajay Sani, as an expert on terror, because the truth is London hasn't seen a major terror attack since 2005, and as Prime Minister May pointed out in Parliament, 13 such attacks have been successfully foiled since 2013. But now, when the strategy seems to be these low-tech, non-sophisticated attacks where something as simple and ordinary and everyday as a car can be used as a weapon or a kitchen knife, how does London defend itself? Or is it something that you simply cannot?
You see, there's nothing called a zero risk situation. There will be a residual risk of some sort of either a repeat of such attacks or something more innovative may just come about. Anything can be more or less weaponized. So to think that you can live in a world without threat is I think, delusional in our current context. On the other hand, I think we should not exaggerate the danger far too much. This is one incident. We are talking about 4 or 5 incidents worldwide of this nature, particularly as far as the European situation is concerned. Things happen. I mean, they are tragic incidents, but I don't think we should pretend that now suddenly London is utterly unsafe and you can't walk the streets without a perpetual fear. These are very occasional and small incidents. They will be, the moment they become, as they have become more frequent across the world, there will be more and more attention paid to people with the kind of background where they have undergone radicalization, where they are placed under, I think, more stringent watch. You will discover that there is a way to ensure that the average citizen's rights are not in any way compromised, even as more and more attention is paid to individuals, both the radicalizers and people who have undergone documented processes of radicalization. So
Ashish Ray, I accept the point made by Ajay Sani that one mustn't exaggerate and one mustn't give the impression that London has become an acutely dangerous city. But on the other hand, yesterday did show that ordinary people on pavements, people crossing bridges, queuing to enter Parliament, can be vulnerable. Now, is that a vulnerability we can respond to without making the terrorists feel they've won and forced us to change our lives? Or is that a vulnerability that, sadly, we simply have to accept and live with and put at the back of our minds?
I think a vulnerability of this kind will always remain, because this person was virtually a suicide attacker. He was willing, I think, to die, because eventually I'm sure he realized that he could not carry out what his mission really was without ultimately getting shot or being killed. So that said, I would add a couple of points. One is that for the moment it is being described attack, subject to further investigation. And I emphasize this because 8 arrests have been made, and some of these arrests, as you've heard, have taken place in Birmingham in the West Midlands of England, and we'll have to wait and see what interrogation emanates and what information emanates from interrogation. The other point is that the person has been described by ISIS as a soldier. Now, my understanding is that when a person is described as a soldier by ISIS, what it means is that this person has been inspired by the ISIS ideology rather than he being an insider. The same terminology was used in the case of Omar Mateen, who carried out an attack in Florida last year. So that, I think, does give us a couple of clues, but as you know, Scotland Yard has kept matters very close to their chest. They haven't disclosed the name of the person yet. 2 reasons for that. One is that they feel that it might jeopardize their investigation, and the second is that it might cause tension between communities. So they want tempers to cool before they come out with the name of the person who carried out this attack.
Is there any danger, Andrew Mitchell, that the attack that you've seen could spark off anti-Islamic sentiment? Periodically, we've seen that happen in recent weeks in America. I know that the issue came up several times in Parliament this afternoon, and repeatedly MPs and the Prime Minister in particular were very insistent that this would not be permitted and it would not be encouraged. But is there a danger that what happens in America could begin to happen in Britain? Spontaneous anti-Islamic sentiment bubbling to the surface?
Well, there clearly is a danger. I profoundly hope that it is not a danger that will materialize. We have been extremely strong politically across all the parties in condemning without reservation Islamophobia and anti-Semitism, and it's the job of all democratically elected politicians to go on doing that forcefully in their own communities and nationally. And we've seen with the murder just a year ago of my friend and colleague Joe Cox, the danger that this sort of hatred creates. And I hope very much that we're going to be able to ensure that it does not develop in the way that your question implies. But is it a danger? Of course it is.
James Lamont, the American president's son, Donald Trump Jr., yesterday launched an attack on Twitter on London Mayor Sadiq Khan, deliberately mischaracterizing an earlier interview that Mr. Khan had given the Evening Standard, where Mr. Khan had said that learning to be vigilant and being prepared for terrorism was part of living in a big city. I noticed that several MPs in Britain have riposted rather angrily against Mr. Trump's mischaracterization of the London MP. Is this tweet from Donald Trump Jr. well known in London, and has it upset and hurt Londoners?
It hasn't had a lot of coverage. I mean, what's had more coverage is Sadiq Khan's own comments in the wake of the attack as mayor, in which I think he's spoken very smartly, compassionately, inclusively about what has happened. But I don't think this tweet has had a lot of resonance in London. I think what's had more resonance is the more official statements that have come out of the States and from the UK's European allies with messages of sympathy, given that we do see these attacks in major cities with some regularity, and that many citizens of these cities are confronted with the same threats and have the same responses, where they want to go about their lives. They do not want to find themselves singling out specific communities. They want to live as citizens in the world in a peaceable way. So I don't think this tweet has had a lot of play here, nor has a lot of resonance.
We're going to take a quick break at that moment, but when I come back, I want to turn briefly in the time left to two aspects of London which are very heartening: the incredible response of the police, and in particular also the emergency services, as well as the resilience and spirit of the people of London. That's an aspect that we should bear in mind, because it's the way in which our societies fight back against terror. We'll be back. Come back, you're watching To The Point, and we're discussing last night's terror attack in London. James Lamont, a lot of people in India have remarked on the speed and efficiency with which the police and the emergency services responded. How impressed are people in London with their conduct and behaviour?
I think they're impressed. London is obviously braced for attacks and has been for some years. And there are regular drills for the kind of attack that we've seen in other European cities. Where this attack happened was right under Big Ben, one of the biggest landmarks in London, really right at the centre of London, Westminster Bridge, Houses of Parliament, a really very big tourist attraction. The fact that the incident was handled very quickly, that more damage wasn't done, even though a lone attacker, that he wasn't able to to penetrate any deeper into the parliamentary complex, the House of Parliament. He was apprehended by a policeman, and then essentially the lockdown that then took place, where you saw the full terror response right across London, in Westminster and beyond. And the fact that the security services responded very, very quickly, they're plainly very present, but not just the security forces, also the medical response and the response of ordinary citizens as well, who immediately came to the aid of people on the bridge, but also to the aid of the policeman who was tragically killed as well.
Andrew Mitchell, one of your colleagues, a junior Foreign Office Minister, Tobias Ellwood, immediately administered and provided artificial resuscitation to the policeman who was shot. His name came up several times for praise in Parliament this afternoon. Am I right in believing that he's become an instant hero?
Yes, I think he has, and rightly so. He was able to administer first aid. He's a former army officer. He has the knowledge and the understanding how to do it, and he acted immediately without fear or favour to go to the help of the policeman who had been grievously wounded and subsequently died. And there's no doubt at all that Tobias deserves the thanks and admiration of all of us for what he did, and he'll be as disappointed as everyone else is that his life-saving skills, so clearly in evidence, were not successful.
I gather Mr. Ellwood, Andrew Mitchell, is a former army officer and still a reservist, and I believe not so long ago he suffered a personal tragedy when his brother died at the hands of terrorist attackers in Bali. Can you tell me something more about him? What sort of person is he?
Well, he was one of those conservatives who joined me in championing the cause of international development when we were in opposition from 2005 to 2010. You're quite right that he did suffer a terrible family tragedy in the bombings in Bali some years ago. So tragically, he is no stranger to these dreadful situations. But he's a popular colleague. We all like him very much, and he's shown, the highest standards probably that we've seen in terms of the respect that politicians are held in. He will be held in very high regard, not only in Parliament but outside, for the instant decision he took to go to help in a fast-moving, at that point, and very uncertain situation. And
now,
as I say, he did it without fear or favour.
Ajay Sani, last night, despite the terror attack that happened in the afternoon, London restaurants and theatres continued to function and people continued to enjoy themselves in the centre of town. Was that proof, in your eyes, as an expert on terror, of Sadiq Khan's claim that Londoners will never be cowed with terror? Was that, in a sense, a sign of the enormous spirit and resilience of this great city?
I am generally not very encouraging of this whole idea of resilience in the face of terrorism. People return to normal life after every tragedy. We were talking about resilience after the 26/11 incident in Mumbai. It's not resilience, it's a question of just going on with life. You don't suspend everything just because someone even very close to you has died. So I think we should understand the actual scale of disruption caused. This was not a major incident. It was a relatively minor incident. To come to any kind of conclusion about the nature of a city, or even for that matter, as you were doing a little while ago, on the nature of the police response or the security forces response, on the basis of an incident of this nature, I think is inappropriate. London has been tested in the past for far worse incidents, and that is where we will discover whether the responses are adequate, or the spirit of the people is some kind of a bulwark against such an incident or not. As a matter of fact, even in major incidents, much larger incidents than these, people have returned to normal life fairly quickly. You can't stop breathing just because a tragedy happens.
I take your point. We shouldn't be exaggerated in our conclusions about what this tells us about London. But nonetheless, Ashish Ray, this morning, What is the mood of the city?
I think it's a somber mood, to be absolutely fair, but people have been going about their business, and you spoke about the normality of yesterday evening. I can tell you that I was sitting at the British Library, and I continued to be there, came back home as normal. My wife went to a play and then to a dinner in central London. My son took a flight. In fact, he took the underground from Victoria and then took a flight to Madrid. So life goes on regardless of these major incidents, and I do not wish to undermine the seriousness of the matter. Of course, it is perhaps not as serious as what happened here in London in 2005, but nevertheless, it is something which needs to be taken note of. I would like to praise the counter-terrorism services in this country, whether it's MI5, MI6, or GCHQ. They certainly conduct themselves in a very smart manner as opposed to a heavy-handed manner. And that, I think, is extremely creditable, and that's why they have prevented incidents from taking place in this country as opposed to one or two that slipped through, because you're really looking at a needle in a haystack in a situation like this.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to have to leave it there. My thanks to all my guests for joining me from London as well as from Delhi. And my thanks, of course, to the British High Commissioner, Sir Dominic Asquith, who gave us an exclusive interview at the top of tonight's program. If you have been, thanks for watching. Goodbye. Good night.